Anthony Nganga is a data and privacy protection specialist. He's a guest for the next conversation. Anthony, thank you very much for joining us. Good morning.
Thank you. Good morning.
Asante sana. How we normally begin?
Much for the opportunity.
We want to learn from you.
Thank you so much.
Kwanza, the risk part, right?
Yes.
What are these risks with our data? But as we begin the conversation, Janet is going to give you the day's quote.
Yeah.
And then let's see what your interpretation of that quote is,
Yeah.
whether you agree with it or not.
A quote. We'll move this quickly because I know we don't have too much time with you. But the quote today, in honor of International Day of Peaceful Coexistence, which is marked on the 28th of January, is that peace is the only battle worth waging. Do you agree?
Yes,
Peace
I
is the
agree.
only battle worth waging.
Fully, I agree fully.
Okay.
And without peace, we don't have a country. We all know where we have been previously, and we all know where certain countries, especially our neighbors, are. So, in my view,
Yeah.
that is an artistic way of putting it across, because peace, ideally, should not be a war. You
Yeah.
know?
I like that.
That I think it's a stylistic device,
Right.
which I don't quite recall.
Yes.
But yes, it's very intriguing. I agree fully.
Okay.
I'm thinking about, but I think about it even from a personal perspective. Like we said earlier, you have to be militant about keeping the peace.
Yes.
It's an oxymoron. It really is. That's the word. I think that's the It's an oxymoron, but you do have to be militant about
Absolutely.
keeping the
Fight
peace.
for peace.
Yes,
Yes.
fight for peace. All right. We're in conversation with data and privacy protection specialist Anthony Nganga.
Yes.
It's good to have you. We've talked about some of the risks that we have with regards to our personal data
Yes.
and how we expose it. But just give us a slight overview before we even get into the emerging technologies
Yes,
and the emerging
yes.
dangers.
Yes.
Some of the risks as far as our data is concerned, and those things that we don't clock our data,
Yes.
but tunapatiana tu willy-nilly.
Yes, thank you so much. Now, today is a very significant day in the world of data privacy because it's the International Privacy Day, which has been commemorated since 1981 when the first legislation touching on data protection was passed at the international level.
Sorry,
which
what
is
year was that?
1981.
Good Lord.
I know.
Yes, 1981.
Okay.
Ahead of its time.
Yes. So, data privacy, two things that I want us to start with is that privacy is a human right and it is a constitutional right. So even before we talk about the Office of the Data Protection Commissioner and the Data Protection Act, in 2010, we gave ourselves a very progressive constitution, and Article 31 provides for the right to privacy. So that is the starting point. Unfortunately, either knowingly or unknowingly, we don't usually take our privacy very seriously, probably because of many other competing factors.
Right.
And sometimes we do get a bit worried, especially in various cases that we have seen recently. One of them was the WorldCoin case,
Right.
where sensitive personal data was being collected, but probably because of the incentive or because of the lack of awareness or lack of understanding, our people were giving their data freely. And I'm very happy that the High Court and the Office of the Data Protection Commissioner came in and reined in that misuse and abuse of personal data. Now, not everybody was involved in WorldCoin case, but every day, everywhere you go, we are leaving our data.
Yes.
It could be physical data. You are going to a building, they want you to indicate your name, ID number, probably they are taking even your vehicle plate number and all that. Sometimes it is digitally. You want to access a website and you are asked to provide certain information, to give certain consent without probably your full understanding of how this will play out.
Or you're asked to accept cookies and they sound delicious, so you accept.
You accept all the time. And one of the even ODPC's report notes is that around fintech and digital lending space, there has been there has been a number of concerns around collection of personal data, processing of personal data, and sharing of personal data. But in some instances, these organizations will have a lawful basis of collecting and processing this information,
Right.
particularly because sometimes in their terms and conditions, you are saying that I accept to give my data and it can be used for various reasons, including marketing
purposes, yeah.
Or they can even contact guys from your phone, Then later, when issues arise and you start confronting these data controllers, and it happens a lot, especially for us who are in private practice and we are practicing around that space. So the data controller will provide you with a form that shows the data subject actually gave consent. So then it goes over and above that. You ask yourself the questions around, is it that we do not fully understand?
Right.
Or is it that probably the need to get an urgent loan is overshadows our ability to analyze the risks? Or finally, is it that this consent is a must for me to be considered and for me to be given a loan? So that now becomes another question of whether this consent met the threshold under the Data Protection Act.
Let's even hang there kidogo, because I was just about to get into that.
Yes.
Is there such a thing as like manufactured consent?
Yes.
when you're saying if me consenting to these things that are very much against my data privacy, if me getting a loan is dependent on my consent to these things, is that really consent or it's manufactured consent?
That's a wonderful question. Now, can we ask ourselves, what is consent that is acceptable before the eyes of the law?
Okay.
Because that is our benchmark. So consent, there are 4 elements that must be present and must be demonstrated for consent to be found admissible or acceptable. Number 1, it must be free. It must be given out of free will. So if giving consent is tied to my getting certain services or accessing certain platforms, then that is not acceptable.
Okay.
It must be free.
Free.
Number 2, it must be express, not implied. And the best illustration here is, say, entertainment joints, where there is a big placard. By entering this place, you give consent to your images being taken, and they may be circulated and all that. Remember that there was no express consent from my side to taking of my image, and number 2, circulating this image online. So
I've
it
always
must
found
be
that crazy. You are telling me I have consented.
Yes.
We didn't have a conversation.
Exactly.
You're telling me I have consented.
Yes.
Make it make sense.
So the only positive thing that we need to note there is they are meeting one of the principles of data protection, which is transparency. At least they are informing you that you are going to take images. But that should not be construed to be consent, because consent must be expressed. Okay. The next component is that it must be unequivocal. What that means is that there must be only one way of interpreting it, and that is, yes, I agree, or I give my consent to the collecting and processing of my personal data. And
or no.
Or no. Yes, yes or no. Then the other component is that there must be a provision that I can withdraw my consent at whatever point. At whatever point I can withdraw my consent, and I can say I no longer want NTV to continue processing my personal data. for example. So those are the elements that must be present for consent to be found acceptable.
Okay.
Yeah.
So then that means, okay, let me put another one.
Yes,
so it must be given of free will. It must be express and not implied.
Yes.
Must be unequivocal, meaning it's a yes or no question.
Yes.
Do you consent to me taking your picture? Yes, no.
Yes.
Yeah. I think I want to take a picture. How do you feel? No, that's not consent.
Yes.
Sour.
Yes.
I can withdraw at any time.
Yes.
When I am, for example, signing up for a mobile loan,
Yes.
or an app or something of this sort.
Yes.
And the part about it that talks about, they can get into my phone book
Yes.
and message my mother and tell her niko na deni na
Yes,
sijalipa.
hujalipa.
That part will be section D subsection 12
Yes.
in the
Yes.
tiniest font. Does that still count as not even but like information? Is there a threshold?
Do you feel like you've been coerced or been duped into consenting?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So here's the thing.
Yes, please.
It's actually been presented to you.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And you're the one who has not read through.
Yes.
It is in small print, it is in big English, but it is written.
It is written. It's somewhere.
It is somewhere.
And you don't have time.
And you don't have
to go
time
and check
to
and all
read.
that because you have some pressing
Because you're
need.
busy.
Pressing need.
And you have a pressing need.
Sometimes
You want
it's
the
a
money
pressing
now.
need, yeah.
Right?
Yes.
What do you say that you are coerced into?
Great. Now, remember the obligation sits with the data controller. And the data controller in this context is, say, the lending company. You know, it's upon them to demonstrate how exactly did I consent to the processing of my personal data.
Right.
Over and above that, remember there is another important principle, which is the transparency. All right? And those times and those days when we could hide, when organizations would hide certain conditions, certain times, somewhere within the long print, are gone. Because when it comes to the Data Protection Act, every data controller must publish a privacy statement.
Okay.
All right? That I can be able to read and be able to accept. And progressively, we've seen a lot of improvement in our industry today. There are websites that will give you the privacy statement. Okay? The terms and conditions are different from the privacy statement that you can go through and you can even scroll and read through, And there are some that will not allow you to accept before you scroll all the way to the very end.
Sure.
So, and these are some of the controls that we are advising and helping data controllers to put in place. Because the idea, actually, the law does not operate to prohibit processing of personal data. All right? The law exists to say, if you want to process my personal data, then there are certain controls that must be in place. You understand? And because, again, if we said it was an offense to process personal data, nothing would happen.
The world
In this
would not
country,
move.
the world would come to a stop. All right? So the obligation then is for organizations and individuals to be able to understand the risks and to be able to put in place appropriate measures,
Okay.
reasonable measures that are aligned with your privacy risks as an organization.
When you had a conversation with the digital lenders, they told us among the things that they're now doing in compliance with the central bank regulation is simplifying all this information about these are the conditions for us extending you this credit, including the data they collect and how they use the data. And they've been told, make it into a one-pager, at most two-pager, in clear, large font.
Yes. Simple English.
No, simple English.
Yeah.
So you see, these are advances towards that. But still, there will be, a rush to not. We don't completely comprehend this data, Maneno. So someone has told you, I'm going to take your data and I shall use it for marketing purposes, for this and
You
the
don't
other.
understand.
I just don't understand.
Yes.
Whose job is it to make me understand? Is it my job to understand, or is it the lender's job to?
That's a good question. And the way I look at it, or the way I see it, is it cannot be left to one individual or one sector. All right? Legally, the data controller has that obligation. legally, all right? But when you look at it, the Office of the Data Protection Commissioner also has an obligation to be able to create to undertake civic education and awareness. And I think the office is doing great work. We are seeing webinars, we are seeing forums, we are seeing various ways of educating the people. The next level of obligation sits with media houses like you, all right? For today, we are doing
Awareness.
We are doing the awareness, all right? We are doing our part. What if this was replicated in all the other media houses, including those that use local languages, so that my grandmother in the village can start to understand, okay, kumbe kuna data protection. Right. How does it touch on me and what do I need to do, So that when people come to find her in the village and start asking for certain data, she would probably ask them, why do you need all this information from me? So awareness is cuts across, and we have an obligation. The next court where the ball stops is professionals. Our work is not just to work for big organizations and make our fees and and go home and enjoy. I think we also have an obligation to undertake civic education and to help people understand privacy risks and people to understand how their data has been protected by the law and what it is that they could be doing on a day-to-day
and
basis
the law kind of it gives Kenyans right to access, delete their data.
Yes.
Doesn't look like a lot of people know their rights.
Yes.
Are there practical steps for somebody today who is like, my data has been misused or I'm concerned about something that's happened? What does a practical step look like? Good.
Can we quickly look at data subject rights? Because it's very important for our people at least to get that. The first right, you have a right to be informed. You're being informed the kind of data that is being collected, the purpose for which this data is being collected, and how it will be used. All right? So the right to be informed. The next right is the right of access. Meaning, I can write to a data controller, a data subject can write to a data controller, to an organization and say, I'd like to access all the information that you hold about me, including how this information was collected, what you use it for, and whether you share this information with any other entity. That is the right of access. Please remember that it is both in the Data Protection Act and also in the Constitution. Article 35 of the Constitution provides for that right. The next right is right to rectification. It means if, for example, and I always want to give an example on CRB, all right? If I once borrowed and I failed to pay and my details were forwarded to a credit reference bureau and I have since cleared that loan, it means that both the listing organization and the bureau has an obligation to rectify my data. So that is a right that I have that all our data subjects have.
Okay.
The next right is the right to portability. This means that when you are being given access to your information, it must be given in a format that you can actually be able to decode, because different organizations are at different levels of technological advancement.
Right.
So if you are giving me my information and probably I need a certain software to be able to decode this information, then the data controller has an obligation to ensure that the data given to me is in a format that I can be able to read and understand and decode. The next right is I have a right to object processing of my personal data. Right? I once went to, say, an entertainment joint and they took a photo of me enjoying life and it's on social media and I don't want that.
I don't want people to know that
I enjoy life.
It's my prerogative.
It's my enjoyment.
It's my privacy, then I can object to processing of that personal data. Or a certain organization sends me marketing messages. Probably I had consented back then when I didn't understand. So now I can object to further processing of this.
Or you've never even been there, but somehow they have your number.
Somehow they have your number.
Miraculous.
Yeah.
And something that we are finding, so this show is about fixing the nation. Something that we are finding interesting is you go to a restaurant, for example, and you pay using M-Pesa. When you pay using,
mobile money. Okay, I can say M-Pesa.
Yes, using mobile money. The next thing, you get a message telling you, thank you very much for visiting us. Probably they give you a link to
give us feedback.
To give them feedback and all that. But after that, you start getting messages telling you, on Friday, tuko na rumba. If Friday tuko na rumba, na tutakuwa na msanii fulani. You understand?
Yep.
That is wrong. All right? And in the spirit of fixing the nation, there has to be a better way.
So which part is wrong? Is it the thank you for visiting us, please rate our service from 1 to 5? Or is it now the follow-up? Yeah,
good.
The future.
That's a good question. When I was paying via mobile money, the purpose for which I was my details were used or shared with the restaurant was to make the payment only. Okay? And if they wanted to communicate to me after that, then I should have there should have been a proper process upon which I give my consent. All right? What makes it worse is marketing, because any marketing activity must be consented. Actually, there are two areas where consent is mandatory. One, marketing, messaging, and number two, processing of data belonging to minors. And for minors, consent must be from the parent. There's a school somewhere.
Or legal guardian.
Or legal guardian. Yes. Yeah, thank you for that. I think you are very alert. So, or the legal guardian, all right? Because a child cannot give consent legally, all right? Now, the next question was about practical steps that I can take when I feel that my data has been abused or misused.
Yes.
So they are in two frontiers. Number one, you have a right to inform the data controller himself. Okay? I am not pleased with the manner in which you are handling my personal data. I don't want to continue receiving this kind of communication. I don't want my image on your website and social media platforms. So that's the first step. And every organization must have a complaint handling mechanism. And this is where most data handlers are being found liable. Because a data subject complaint, you did not do anything. Right. You know, someone wrote to you and told you, I am not Mariam Bishar, so you shouldn't be sending me these emails. 2 months later, 1 year later, 2 years later, you are still receiving that information. We've seen financial institutions penalized because of that. Okay, we've seen data controllers penalized because of 6 months. Exactly.
Yeah.
So that's number one. So again, for organizations, because we need to look at it, we shouldn't be happy only when people are on organizations are being penalized. You know, as responsible citizens, we should be happy when organizations are picking these lessons and doing the right things. All right, that's number one. The next step, if you are not happy with the manner in which the data controller handled your complaint, you can go to the Office of the Data Protection Commissioner. And the good thing is, it's digital and it is free of charge. You will not be charged anything. So you just go to the website, there's a link where you can file a complaint, you indicate what the issue is and the organization that you are complaining against, how you think the kind of reparation that you would want to get. And the Office of the Data Protection Commissioner is considering all these complaints and issuing determinations. They may agree with your complaint, you may be compensated. They may not agree with your complaint, but again, there are many other remedies that the Office of the Data Protection Commissioner can give. Last year alone, they handled and completed 96 cases.
Okay.
All right? So those are the matters that went all the way to determination. But there are many of them which were also dealt with through alternative dispute resolution. Because the idea at this level, we've not yet reached the European Union level where, we are very fast to penalize.
And everybody is aware.
We are still in this compliance stage, making people aware and trying to drive the message home. So those are the practical steps. Those are the options that any of us and any Kenyan watching and listening to us today has at their disposal.
Help This Fixer, who is writing to us anonymously, says, I was once featured in a TV segment in an expose that we had agreed that I would be anonymous. Unfortunately, I was put everywhere in full glare. In the next hour of the bulletin, I was blurred, but the unfortunate bit is I had already been put out there with the blurred version out there in the internet, already in a major video streaming website. Can that be deleted?
Yes, they are entitled to various things there. And probably I also need to mention that for journalist work and literature and art, there are certain exemptions. All right? So that may not be primarily a data protection question, but it is also about the regulations and the guidelines that journalists are bound by. All right? But from a data protection perspective, that information can either be completely truncated or blurred or even deleted. But now that is not a decision that we can be able to make right now, because sometimes you have to balance between private rights, private interest, and the public interest in it and public good in it. So I think that is something that, if provided to the right platforms or to the right forums, I believe that is a media station that has a data protection officer. They can be able to review it and see the best way around it
to remove it.
In this particular case, it's not like investigative journalism, and we'll talk about some of those exemptions that you've mentioned.
Yes.
This is essentially a source whose confidentiality had been assured, but ended up being exposed.
Yes.
Right. Is there legal recourse for that?
Yes, there would be, but I would not be quick to say yes or no before I understand the full context and details of the matter. But there is a likelihood that it can be taken up. In my view,
I think
that best falls within the professional regulation
element of it.
I
think it sounds like what the fixer is asking.
Yes.
That I have no problem with it being aired.
Yes.
The mistake was made by the journalists and the media house in that they did not blur in the first version. And when they realized, they corrected it.
Yes.
Unfortunately, it was already out there. So the version that is already out there, not on the platform that belongs to the media house, but on other streaming services, how do I get now that deleted? You see, once it's already gone there, it's already now being circulated on social media, so even after we correct.
Yeah, I get you. Two things. Number one, it can be done through the media house that published this in the very first place. Okay? Through a formal communication and, laying out what your concerns are and even mentioning some of the streaming platforms where your image is. All right? And again, the media house, I believe our media houses are responsible and accountable. That's something that should be taken up and addressed appropriately. It's a valid concern that touches on various aspects. One, image rights. That's an intellectual property element. Privacy, and now journalism ethics, around the ethics around that. And I believe you guys have certain regulations.
Okay. There's another one.
I think his concern is, I was promised it will not be aired,
and here it is, and it's now all over.
Again, probably it puts his life at risk. Yeah, and that's what we are even saying. Even when you look at the judiciary, there is a witness protection program. because you don't know. Maybe the expose rubs certain feathers.
The wrong way.
And his security and safety is of paramount importance. I think he can raise that issue through the right platforms to get the appropriate support that he needs.
Let me give you another concern.
Please.
That for purposes of national security, we have CCTV.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
CCTV here, CCTV in places and all.
Yes.
Now, an incident happens.
Yes.
And there's a review of the CCTV.
Yes.
And in a bid now to establish what particularly happened in this particular space,
Yes.
we capture Anthony
Yes.
in this area.
Yes.
Not a suspect, not so on, not any. But as we are showing now, Eric, the suspect approaching, we are also seeing Anthony leaving, and it's all out there in the public.
Yes.
So, what is Anthony's recourse? Because he is not the
victim.
the
He's not
suspect.
the
Yes.
perpetrator.
He's not the culprit,
Yeah.
but he's being shown there in the context of people want to see at what point did Eric enter. Walikutana na huyu, and you can see this is.
And they're not blurred because they don't.
Haven't blurred.
That's careless.
I'll give you a practical case. In the recent case of the death of Cyrus Jirongo and the CCTV from that petrol station, vehicle comes, vehicle leaves, these people stop, they come out, they're doing whatever they're doing, they open the bonnet of the car, they come out later to explain, actually, us guys were innocently coming to pick our brother from the airport, we were transporting him back home. But the way it has come out is that there was a suspicious
car
that
there
also
at the
came.
same time.
And then it left.
Yeah.
Now that exposes such people to great danger even before they come to explain.
Before they explain.
Before they explain.
Yeah.
Whether this is published on a major news platform or on social media. What's the recourse for such?
What's the recourse for such? Now, CCTV is allowed. Use of CCTV is allowed by the law. However, there are certain safeguards that must exist when you are using CCTV. The first one, people must be informed that this place has CCTV and all that. The principle of transparency. Okay? And number two, purpose limitation. It's a principle in data protection. What that means is if my CCTV, if a CCTV footage of Anthony was taken for security reasons, it cannot be used for any other reason. All right? The next thing is when you look at the legitimate interest, there are legitimate interest to investigate, for example, the incident that you mentioned and know what exactly transpired. This is a Kenyan. I think he was a leader.
Yeah.
We need to know what exactly happened. And in that situation, we need 360 information. Probably not the entire public, but the people who are doing these investigations will need a 360 view of all the individuals who are there.
Yeah.
All right? So it would be a problem if this information is being used for a purpose other than the purpose for which it was collected. All right? I do not see a violation in providing a CCTV footage where I was. All right? And also the suspect was also in that vicinity. Because in the fullness of time, we are able to tell this
What
is
exactly happened.
This is the victim. These other people were genuine bypassers who are going about around their business.
Yeah, but Anthony,
right? Yes.
this is information is given to the investigating officer,
yes.
who is known gazetted officer.
Yes.
All right? But also information is given and shared in WhatsApp groups.
Yes. Now that becomes
Because
a
now
challenge.
we see that all the time. I mean, the people at the security desk, they record with their phone and watch it when it really happened. They record, they share this.
Yes.
And so you see, before this happened, this was Janet coming in, then Janet left. Who was Janet with? It's another story that is not related to the incident.
Yes.
Starts unfolding here. Yes.
So
and that
this
is
the
Janet's
point.
privacy.
This is the point. Remember that an investigator has certain powers, right? To be able to assess and evaluate all the information available. What I find the problem would be is an unauthorized or unprocedural circulation of this information. All right? If it is the police who are investigating, let them do it with privacy in mind. If we are talking about journalists who are investigating all this and all this, there are many things that can be done. Those plate numbers can be blurred. Those faces can be blurred. All right, especially because now it puts innocent people in the mix. But again, we should not be too cautious about data protection that we impede proper and comprehensive investigations. Remember, we need to know the truth.
Human intelligence. Everybody should have access to all this so that we are all investigating at the same time.
So that is not okay.
Is there a recourse?
Yes.
If I find that that image that has myself, the image is being circulated outside of the, it's being circulated in the public.
Yes.
In WhatsApp groups.
Yes. So that is when it becomes.
This is not. It is not a police officer who's consuming this and calling me to ask me what happened.
Yes.
It is information that's out there.
Yes.
In the public.
Yes. And probably it's been twisted, and so this is a violation. This is the point where the data controller or the owner of that premise where the CCTV is would be found liable. If this footage is being used for purpose other than the reason why it was taken.
Okay. Yeah. Quick one. Mine is a very rudimentary question compared to Latif's. Signing into buildings.
Yes.
Where does that fall? This leave your name, ID number, number plate, everything, phone number.
Yes.
Yeah.
Great. There could be. You see, I said that processing of data is okay if it is done within the principles of data protection. All right? So there could be certain principle or lawful basis. If processing is done in accordance with a lawful basis, then it would be okay. The problem usually is the risks associated with the manner in which this data is collected. For example, you find a book. There's a soldier. You write your details. Sometimes you are even asked to leave your ID there, And in this country, if someone has your ID number,
they have everything.
Has your phone number, and probably even your address, they know where you live and all that. You understand? So there are glaring risks around that manual process. Because when the book is full, who follows up to know where this is? The good thing is that ODPC has issued draft guidelines for security firms. To guide how that process is to be used. So, in short, there is a lawful basis for an owner of a building to be able to know who are the people visiting in here. Even for your own safety and benefit. For example, when there was a 911 up there, how would we know the people who are inside that building? Probably if there were no.
Can a building Can a building deny me entry if I don't consent to giving my data? Lawfully?
Not lawfully.
Okay.
Not lawfully.
Sawa. Time imesha. If you is there like time imesha. Bye. Thank you so much.
Thanthink you very much. Willie Lubembe is up next with your world. Cervical Cancer Awareness Month is every January, so they're marking that conversation today. From Mariam Bisha, Eric Latif, and myself, Janet Rogwa, thank you for staying with Fixing the Nation. One conversation at a time. Vibe shift on Nation FM next as well. See you tomorrow.